Welcome to the Night Temple, a weekly podcast about art, memory, and inspiration.
Hi, and welcome to the Night Temple. I'm your host, Carisa.
I'm Andrew.
And we're here today with Lukas Frank of Storefront Church, amazing band that we happened upon, opening for Emma Ruth Rundle, and just totally blew our minds.
Yeah. Film composer.
Yep, film composer as well, and just incredible songwriter and actually incredible artist.
The visual aspect and the world, you know,
the world
of Storefront Church.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful and really rare to see. Like I haven't seen that in a really long time. It actually reminded me a little bit of Scott Walker, who we both absolutely love. So
right, same.
Yeah. So
thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here.
We had this scheduled for a couple of weeks ago and had to cancel it for the wildfires.
Indeed.
Yeah. So you took off to. You had to evacuate.
No, it was just close enough to where it was particularly uncomfortable. And I have some family in Oakland, so I took the opportunity to go visit for a couple days while things literally blew over.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad you can be with us now.
Me too.
And I'm glad you're safe and everything. So this is going to be a fun adventure because we're not, as familiar with you as a person. So I want to start with how you grew up. What got you into music to start with?
The drums was kind of my foot in the door. I was really into jazz drums for a lot of years. I was a jazz drummer through high school, very, very committed to that. I went to a public arts high school here in LA where it was, a very kind of adult level music education. So I was an instrumentalist first and toured around as a drummer in my early 20s and switched tracks to Storefront Church. And never looked back. And so I've been doing Storefront Church since my early 20s, and trying to kind of find my footing in the front of the stage as opposed to the back.
Yeah.
Was there a moment? Was there some inspiration that where you were like, I want to do this. This is I want to just pursue art. I want to pursue music.
No. I think I come from a family of artists. Music had always been kind of my lane. Switching from drums to songwriting was a very gradual shift. I thought I would produce first for friends of mine, and I thought I would write and record some songs to showcase my chops as a producer, and then it just became my own project and has remained that way. But yeah, it's been kind of, when you grow up in Los Angeles, there's a heavy emphasis on artists.
Yeah.
But music for whatever reason was my lane from an early age.
And that was just instinctive, it wasn't?
Yeah, my dad loves music. We would listen to music together, but it did really grab me in ways that other mediums are like nothing really else. I mean, I became pretty obsessive about music when I was very little, 7 or so. I can remember just pressing repeat on songs on my little boombox all day and just becoming pretty hooked.
Yeah.
Very young.
And what music were you pressing repeat on, or what music really moved you? Because, your style is unique and it's expressive and it's not like you're making straightforward pop songs. It's very creative and
Thanks.
Yeah.
AC/DC.
Awesome.
like most 7-year-old boys. I still love AC/DC. Supertramp. I still love Supertramp. Kansas, Chicago, The Who, Blue Oyster Cult, War. Who does that song? Cats in the Cradle and the Seal.
Cat Stevens.
No.
The other one, there's been a few covers of it.
Yeah, Cat Stevens does cover it. Anyway, that guy, I was obsessed with that guy for some reason. It was funny because that song's about like an absentee father, and my dad showed me that song. But for some reason, I loved that song. A lot of very kind of, I think the only through line that I can see there is like a lot of melodrama, a lot of big music with big statements, big kind of. They're all of those bands are aggressive in their own way.
Yeah.
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 And your music, like live, like watching you, is very theatrical and very dramatic and just kind of rich on that level that, it feels, authentic and also like there's a lot of craft and consciousness that's present. When you're doing it, it's not just like you're flailing around, there is a sense of that real integrity and the
intentionality.
Intentionality, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So, yeah, it's interesting that those influences are there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, those are from a young age. But Scott Walker and Nick Cave, like I think we mentioned off pod, are definitely, the heroes of any good goth, but yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So, okay, so like as you got older, you went down the Nick Cave, Scott Walker kind of trail.
First, I went down this straight ahead jazz trail
cool.
as a drum. That was really where I started to deeply practice music as an instrumentalist, and I really studied as a drummer for all of my adolescence. I thought that was going to be the rest of my life. It was going to be the drums.
Yeah.
And yeah, I became obsessed with, Wayne Shorter records and Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers and Miles Davis Quintet and all these, just the Rudy Van Gelder era Blue Note records were really important to me. I sort of fell out of love with being an instrumentalist late in my teens, in my early 20s maybe, and was kind of looking for a little more. And I really didn't listen to music outside of jazz throughout all my teens.
Wow,
I
that's
just
cool.
was really, really obsessed with jazz.
Yeah.
And so then when I came to different genres, it was almost like I was, I have a lot of friends who were very religious growing up, and they talk about, discovering whoever, Sky Ferreira, Led Zeppelin, whatever,
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, when I was 16, I wasn't allowed to have this record. And that was not my experience, but I definitely kind of starved myself of contemporary music for a long time. And so when I came to it, I maybe had kind of a weird perspective on a lot of it. Now I really do. A lot of people say they listen to everything, but they really don't. I mean, I'm out here listening to Sabrina Carpenter and as much as I am Diamande Galas. Like just it's just I'm really. It's hard for me to land on one thing that's my thing, or it just depends on how I'm feeling.
I think that's really relatable to us in general, and it's something that I feel like is probably why we gravitated towards you when we saw your show, because we're composers. Andrew's a drummer as well, actually, but also a cellist, and so we are like inundated in a lot of different. I mean, I love jazz so much, and we're also like interested in so many genres of music, like our musical repertoire is pretty like bombastic because it's like, things pulled from every genre.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing that's really unique about your sound, is that you can actually kind of feel that and hear that in what you're doing, which is, unusual and super cool, and also lends itself well to somebody that does composition for visual media, which is what we do as well, and what you've also gone into. I think, there might be a link there with that.
Yeah, I've always tried to make really visual sounding music, regardless of whether I'm scoring something or making a standalone album. I want something that I want to make something that demands attention and that feels like you can see it while you're listening to it,
I mean, you have this like lush album that has these beautiful orchestral arrangements.
Ink and oil.
Ink and oil,
and
which...
oil.
Which came out last year, and it has... there's strings. Are there other sections in there too? I can't remember.
Yeah,
there's brass
in there as well.
Yeah.
And just even without them present, seeing you live, you could still hear the presence of that richness and that orchestral kind of composition style, just from hearing your music in a really raw way at the show that we saw you at, and it did feel very visual. It almost felt like there was some element of storytelling going on. So, I'm kind of curious about that aspect as well. So what kind of themes does that album in particular have a very specific theme for you?
Yeah. At the time that I was making Ink and Oil, it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was extra isolated out in the woods. And I was trying to come to some kind of understanding about my relationship with faith.
Yeah.
I think for whatever reason, my foot in the door to that was kind of some sort of mental breakdown, some sort of insanity, and what came with that was kind of a off the walls imagination, and these characters kind of grew up out of that headspace. So there are these kind of fragmented narratives throughout the record that make total sense to me, but I don't imagine they're super coherent on the page necessarily. But that wasn't really my goal.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs, as I was writing them, just kind of left me totally perplexed. I had no idea what I was talking about. And later on, they kind of revealed themselves to me. And yeah, I was having all sorts of weird, almost like these sort of waking nightmares, dream kind of things, about my great uncle, who I believed for a while he was visiting me. He had disappeared from prison when I was very young, and I started having these dreams, nightmares, whatever, where he would visit me and he'd have an orange and he'd peeled back the orange and he'd written something on the rind.
Wow.
And it was the same thing every time, and it went away. And then when I got older and when the pandemic hit and the sun was just like a big orange in the sky, the dreams came back and all sorts of other things that made their way into the record. And kind of it became an exercise in kind of like living in that headspace and that liminal space, that world in between being awake and being asleep, and trying to find some kind of faith there.
And it's just like a lot of unconscious stuff. I think when you don't understand, when stuff's coming through and you don't understand it, it's like the good stuff.
Can be, yeah.
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 it's funny that you say that, because it's pretty much the feeling that I got without being able to understand,
Oh, good.
the words. That's the experience that I had watching the show. It very much translated into this madness and faith and faith and madness, and that just felt very, very present, and just this super cool unexplored terrain, that it was just really beautiful and dramatic and intense and heartbreaking and beautiful as well.
I think faith is making a comeback. I think that things are getting desperate enough where people are interested in exploring
something beyond the surface.
I think, it's funny to say that, given that most of the world is, observing some kind of faith. But in Los Angeles, it feels like the exception more than the rule. But I've noticed that people are coming around to the sort of materialist paradigm is shifting a little bit. And people are interested in things that are beyond what they can understand. I know that I am.
It's interesting that you went through all that in the pandemic as well, because it's I feel like the isolation of the pandemic, but also just the sense that we're all kind of collectively as a whole world, we were in this space of kind of life and death,
That's true.
I know, when we both got COVID right at the beginning of it, and Carisa in particular got really sick. And
I don't think that feeling of death has left me, but not in a negative way, in a quite peaceful way, in a way where I feel like I know what it's going to feel like to die. And I'm kind of less attached to my ego because of it. It's just I am more attached to myself as a spiritual being of consciousness than an ego attached to this body, I guess. That's kind of been my takeaway from it. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes I'm I don't want to deal with this stress of being alive anymore, but not in a serious way. No one needs to call the doctor.
I'm glad we've kept it nice and light for the first 5 minutes.
This is what we do.
Did you did you feel like you kind of came through something when you had the songs written, or was it more that the songs came out of this kind of meditation? And
no, I don't. I would like to say that the songs kind of were this catharsis, and there were parts of the process that felt that way, but what followed making this record were some of the most creatively frustrating years of my life. I couldn't find. I left my record label right when I finished it, due to creative differences. And I couldn't find a place for it to live, couldn't figure out how I wanted to put it out. It took me years to get the art together. It took me years to get music videos together. And then I had this wonderful couple, a married couple, who were going to direct all my videos. And they got a divorce the month I was supposed to start shooting with them, and so all the videos fell through after years of planning. And so I kind of had to go out on my. One of them still helped me a little bit, or quite a bit, and so him and I just went out on our own and kind of tried to scrape something together, but it was not what was planned. And the record sat on a shelf for 2 years, and it was a 3-year process to make it. So it's old now, It's 6 years ago I started this, and some of those songs have been around that long, No, it kind of haunted me, the album, it just felt stuck inside of me for such a long time it took a while for me to realize that it was finally over.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're still touring those songs, and you're still talking about them, you know, and so it's so not that there's anything wrong with that. You know? I really believe in the record, and I really love the record, and I love talking about it. But it was certainly a sort of unhinged emotional state that I was writing from, and you know, it's kind of, there is a sort of Groundhog Day that we're forced through as performing artists, where you do it over and over and over again, and I'm a little you know, I'm trying to inject some humor into the future music so that I can Groundhog Day that instead of this anyway.
So you are writing some new stuff now.
Yes, I took, after Ink and Oil was kind of in the can and on its way out, I took a hard detour to focus on scoring. One of the features just premiered at Sundance that I scored, East of Wall, a beautiful film by a childhood friend, Kate Beecroft, and my best friend and I scored that together. Dan Meyer, he's in a band called Agriculture, a metal band. And yeah, him and I pivoted pretty hard towards the scoring thing. We had 2 features at once that we were scoring all of a sudden. And the other one's a beautiful movie called Walk With Me that Alex Gibney produced. They're really wonderful projects. We got really lucky, and I pivoted towards that and have a little momentum there, and so now I'm feeling a little more comfortable kind of pivoting back towards writing, and hoping to have another album finished this year.
Cool.
And are you planning to keep pursuing the composition stuff for media?
Yeah, I'm scoring an audiobook right now.
Nice.
Two short films and another feature this summer, and hoping that more will come my way. I'm really enjoying that work quite a bit. I have yet to really, you know, you're always scoring the movie you're making, you know? So it's not always that I haven't quite gotten to kind of do what I perceive to be as my thing, you know, necessarily for a movie, which I think will be a big, an exciting moment for me when I get to do that. But I'm just grateful to have the work and the projects right now, and I'm really enjoying the craft of it all.
Yeah. I mean, film scoring just requires so much collaboration with directors. And have you found that experience to be okay? Because some, you know, different composers have different experiences project to project. Has there been one that's, you know, particularly spoken to you, you know, one that's been harder, you know? They're
all really challenging. It's a lot of work, but I think on both of the features that I just mentioned, each director had a really clear idea of what they wanted, and they were upfront about that going in, and so we just got on the same page before we even started working. You know, there is you get a lot of notes, there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of changing things that you've fallen in love with, and killing your babies, you know, and I do think that there's something beautiful about that too, where you end up somewhere that you just your own instinct never would have taken you, and vice versa, and you have to accept that you're kind of working towards something outside of both of you. Yeah, and that's a pleasure. But yeah, in the moment it can be frustrating and challenging, and we really had to learn, you know, that they get to ask for infinite revisions, and that's just how it goes. You know? We didn't know. But it's I really enjoy the collaborative aspect of it. If it was, if I was putting all this pressure on this for it to be my one creative outlet, I might feel differently.
Yeah.
But because I have Storefront Church, which is allowed to be whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
This to me feels like more about being of service and kind of honoring a craft than it does like flexing my chops.
Yeah.
And I think that feels like it tracks with our experience of it as well.
Yeah, it's like a kind of dance between, because there's your voice is what you're kind of bringing to it. You know, it's like yourself and your experiences
and you're
your
still
voice,
in there regardless
and
of
your
the
craft,
revisions
and your craft. But there's kind of this dance with like your instincts and your ego. And you know, like I find some of the, you know, it's sometimes, you know, if we're scoring something, we have this point where we're just like, the director is so wrong, you know, like, you know, they're so wrong about this. If only they would listen to us. And then you do the thing, and sometimes they were right.
They were right.
You know,
and it's so
like,
much better than what you would have thought.
Yeah. Totally. We've had that experience for sure. Yeah, I think I was working for this composer, Carlos Rafael Rivera, for a little while. And he talks about, he's so all about he's all about thinking of the composer's position as a supporting role, and as he talks about it like I think he says he's building a table, not making a painting. You know, he's building a table to set something on top of, which I don't 100% agree with, but I know what he's I know what he's saying. I know what he's getting at, and sometimes you are building a table. You know? And it's interesting on one project, one of the producers, you know, sometimes you'll hear things like, you know, you want to make sure that what you're making for the score is going to hold up on its own. You want it to be able to stream. Yeah. And we're like, no. No, we don't. I want it to hold up on the screen in your movie. I don't care about. And so it's an interesting thing as you kind of build a resume and you're showing people music that's separate from what you were making the thing to, you know, and it's like, well, it made sense on the page, you know, in the screen, but yeah, it's a really it's a very different thing where you're married to the dialogue, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes less is more when you're married to the dialogue, right? It's like you need these
the dialogue can be the melody instrument.
For sure.
You're, you know, just providing the
table.
harmonic structure. The table.
Totally.
Yeah, you have to be service-minded, I think, to be a composer. Like it's all about service. It's all about serving the director, the producers, and the film itself.
Yeah.
And I love movies. I feel like my strength as a composer is understanding emotional qualities and how I can pair things with what I'm feeling from what's happening. I feel like that's at least that's the part that I get the most joy out of, is sort of understanding what a scene is trying to tell me and getting to kind of further bring that out. I like that. It's really fun. Satisfying when the alchemy comes together and you're making it and you tricked yourself into feeling the thing that you're trying. You know, it's very rewarding.
It is. I mean, have you had the experience of like crying to your own music with the same with us? Yeah. We're like, oh my God.
Yeah. For sure.
So you were mentioning that Werner Herzog was one of your biggest influences as well earlier before we're on camera. So I guess my question around that is, what about Werner Herzog is inspiring for you? Are there other people in that category that aren't necessarily musicians, but they could be writers or other filmmakers?
Yeah. Werner, there are certain artists that you come across where you can sort of feel a freedom coming through in what they're making, and a commitment, and he's almost like there's a single-mindedness, like there's just this intense follow-through to what he does, and a depth to it, and there are certain artists that, for whatever reason, they just remind me that you can do whatever the fuck you want. He's one of them. As long as you commit and believe and put your all into it, and so he's really inspired me for that reason. I mean, it almost doesn't matter what he makes or what it's about. It's just when he does it, it's so interesting. You know, it makes sense that his documentaries are so captivating because you're seeing things as he sees them, as he wants you to see them, and it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Other people, so many, too many to count. I'm not sure, but they're always changing. They're always popping up. You know, he's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. So like freedom, like being able to find a sense of freedom for you is a big trigger.
Yeah. I think that for whatever reason, unfortunately, I fall back to a certain baseline of things have to be a certain way. Things have to be good. Things have to be like as though there's a correct way to go about making something. And it's an impossible place for me to really get anything going from that frame of mind. I have to find ways to trick myself into not evaluating whatever's happening as it's happening, and to almost be like an observer of the person who is me making something, like an impartial, it's just supportive. And so when I hear people, wish him the best, don't love what's happened to him, but Kanye West has, his music does make me feel that way, where I hear things and I'm just like, it breaks your brain open, and the way he'll just hard cut a song together, the front half of the song is completely different from the back half of the song, and it's so surprising and euphoric, and it just works because it works. And because he committed, Scott Walker's music does that too. There's lots of examples probably that aren't coming to mind, but something that makes me forget.
I really relate to the idea of getting out of your own way. When with creativity, if you've got to kill that analytical that analytical side of yourself,
for sure,
when you're in the creative side, and you can bring it back, when you need it. Right. But there's those moments, where you've just got to be with the feelings and the ideas, and it's interesting because there's all these structures that we have, setting up your computer and your door or whatever, or like making a record to release, and you've got to think about packaging that as a record to release in the world or whatever it is. And so it's like you kind of have to deal with structures, but then you have to forget about them as well, and it's a constant dance. And it's cool. It's cool that you talk about Werner Herzog in that way, because that guy did whatever he wanted, but somehow
that guy
still
does whatever he wants.
He does whatever he wants, and is just.
David Lynch is the same.
But they've still made movies that are just like, hey, that's a movie, that's a proper,
Yeah, there's still so much. It doesn't feel. It's a fine line between that and complete self-indulgence, where I still feel cared for when I'm watching those films. I still feel thought of. I still feel the love behind it. And sometimes I can go too far in the other direction, where I'm just making something that is sort of devoid of that love. But I don't know. I can't think that way when I'm making. I can't really think about anything when I'm making things. I just kind of have to go.
And when you say devoid of love, you just mean, fuck the audience. I'm just going to go into this weird zone for a moment.
Yeah, I mean...
Which is sometimes transcendent for an audience as well.
True. True. It's interesting because I don't know if I think of an audience, like when I think of an audience, I think of it's an audience full of clones of myself.
Yeah.
And I have to have love for them.
Yeah. That's nice.
But when it's if I try and think of an audience full of strangers, I shut down because I have no clue what they want to hear.
Yeah.
But I know what an audience full of me kind of wants to hear.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah.
I've never thought of myself as the audience member before.
We are, though, as we're making things, right?
We are. We're absolutely
the only
are.
one who's hearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, a really powerful medicine.
Yeah, I think, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, like you said, if you think about making music for a stranger, it's like, who is this person? But the reason that people relate to art is because they are like you.
Yeah, exactly.
You
That's what I was about to say, is that
Yeah.
the beauty of it is that when you make something and it's, directed with love towards a version of yourself, and then people connect to it, it feels like they're connecting to you. You feel close to them because they relate to it automatically without having to meet or anything. It's a reminder of our connectedness in a way. And so my goal when I think about making things is committing to, not trying to pander to my idea of what someone I admire or what I think someone wants to hear me do, but instead, I know things are going well when I'm sitting there and I'm laughing out loud because I'm entertaining myself. I'm connecting. I'm relating to what's happening.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
If anyone can also feel that way, that's beautiful, and that's the joy of it all, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really just a powerful thought in these times where there are so many ways to pander to an audience.
Sure.
And so many ways to lose yourself along the way. Because I don't think that we ever get to where we want to go by doing that, but it becomes such a knee-jerk reaction, where people think there's some part of themselves that they need to modify in order to be, in order to have a career or in order to, and
we're told this constantly as well.
We are told this,
given information constantly about you have to conform to a particular thing, whether it's, if you scroll Instagram, you'll get a million ads for
how to conform.
How to conform in different ways, and if you're a musician, then you'll get a bunch of ads telling you this is the way to.
I mean, for me, it's just something I notice with the sync world. These days, getting a sync placement is thanks to the Spotify universe. There's not really many ways for musicians to earn an income, so sync becomes one of those ways. Touring, sync, these become, really important things. And with sync in particular, there is so much space to have to, if you want to do that, and go right into that for a living, and you're working off of briefs, it becomes where you might work with a composer on a film off of a brief and off of a discussion. Once it hits the sync side of things, then it's infringed upon your personal work as well. So I feel like we found ourselves down this rabbit hole a little bit where we're getting briefs, sync briefs, and going hang on a minute.
Yeah, we can write in that style.
I mean, of course we can write in that style, but now I don't even know who I am anymore.
Well,
so I like this. I feel like what you're saying is the antidote of that. And right now we're in the year of the snake, the wood snake, which is all about coming home to yourself. And it's all about authenticity and finding that center again. And I feel like what you're saying is really in line with that and just becoming your own audience. It seems very natural to you, but it's not always natural for everyone.
No, it's not always natural for me either. And I have gotten kind of, I like to think that I'm open to advice, that I'm open to other people's ideas and trying things. And when you're trying to have a career when you attach expectation of money to the thing that you're making, it opens all the door to all this fear of for everyone to jump on. When people hear the thing you made, if they don't hear dollar signs, or if they don't hear how it can relate to something that is already successful, you're already kind of behind. And so I'm grateful that the scoring work has really helped me take some of the pressure off of the Storefront Church work, because it doesn't have to make that much money anymore. I can taking the pressure off in that way has always been my goal. I mean, I've taught children music lessons for 12 years now. I worked in restaurants. I've tried a myriad of different ways to take the pressure off of Storefront Church, but it always, somehow seeps back in there. I think it's a spiritual practice to try and maintain shirking the pressure of what I think I'm supposed to be doing. And people like Werner Herzog always help remind me that of sort of that, maybe it's almost like a purist sort of way of looking at things, where it's just about the thing and the external stuff is none of my business, and how it lands with people, if anyone cares, if it makes money, whatever, if it fits. I remember when I finished Ink and Oil, my mom, one of the first things my mom said, and my mom's a wonderful artist and has great taste, but she said to me, I can't picture really hearing this on Spotify. And I was on like a Spotify playlist, and I was like, that's the point. That's the fucking point. Sometimes you make things as a response to, I was like, oh, I'm not hearing what I wish I was hearing.
Yeah.
But I know what she meant. It pokes out. You can't hear a lot of those songs playing in a coffee shop or, in a yoga class. Which was not the intention.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the music that stands the test of time would have probably never been able to be played in the background like that. Sure. I think it's a compliment that she's giving you a compliment.
I thought so too. I thought so too. That's how I felt.
I'm interested in the process, the orchestrations for Ink and Oil. How did that come about? Like, what was the recording process, the arrangement process? Did you work with did you do the arrangements? Did you work with somebody? And because just when I listened to that album, I was like, it's when you hear it, you're just like, oh, this is, it's like such a special thing,
Thank you.
to hear,
very special,
to hear orchestral arrangements. It's
I really spent a lot of time sort of conceiving the arrangements in my brain, and was very clear on where I wanted each song to go when I invited Travis Warner in, who deserves a lot of the credit for the gorgeous orchestration and arrangements. I would say I'd had a majority of the lead melodies and the general structure of each song mapped out, and I was sort of I was very new to working with MIDI string libraries and things, and so I had sort of rudimentary examples of what I wanted him to flesh out and bring to real players, and I knew that I wanted it to go to real players. So it was 3 years, two or so of me just on my own kind of crafting these things and sending him like 2-page things about one song and what it means and from moment to moment where he's supposed to go, and we'd have many reference playlists. And it was one of those things where we hadn't worked together prior to this, and the whole time he was like, I get it, I love it, I understand. And I was like, yeah, but do you? And when he started sending me back his first passes at things, I was like, okay, he truly does understand this music, and he deserves a lot of credit for the where they landed. So yeah, some of them were him just kind of finishing something that was my brainchild, or on a song like Divine Distraction on the record, there's a gorgeous string arrangement that I had nothing to do with. It was just all him. And it's one of the more beautiful moments on the record, I think.
That's so nice. It's nice when you can find a good collaborator like that gets where you're, that gets what you do and where you're going. And
I got very lucky.
Yeah.
I picked him because he worked with David Campbell for years. And David Campbell, for those who don't know, is Beck Campbell's father of Beck. And David Campbell did the strings for one of my favorite records of all time, which is Sea Change. And there's stunning string arrangements on Sea Change. And so anyone who was even near David Campbell was good in my book. So that's why I connected with Travis.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you're working on a new album this year. Do you want to talk a bit about like what kind of themes, like, you know, off the back of the last themes that were faith and
you mentioned humor.
You mentioned humor, and I'm just
I don't know
curious.
I don't know if humor is the right word, but it's certainly making me laugh.
Yeah.
No, I can't talk about themes. I think there's like a early. Sometimes when you kind of shed light on the thing too soon, it loses all of its.
Totally.
It just dies.
Yeah.
But I can talk about process a little bit. You know, Ink and Oil was. I couldn't have put more. I put all of my eggs and all of my neighbors' eggs in that basket. You know, I spent my life savings. I spent several other people's life savings trying to make that record. You know, and I refuse to do that again. And so I'm I'm trying to make 90% of the record at home.
Yeah.
And while maintaining a similar kind of approach. Or similar, it's a similar world that we're living in on this record, but the limitations are starkly different. And so that, I have to say, it is the most fun I've ever had making a record, is kind of giving myself that, both that limitation and that permission to just be like, yeah, this is it. I'm making it here. And this is the final thing. This is what it's going to sound like. Maybe I'll do drums somewhere, whatever, but this is it. And I don't have good gear. I have one microphone. I have a fucking Scarlett interface. You know, I'm one of those, like, I just have shit. I don't have, good preamps and things. And I'm thrilled with how it's been coming together, I have to say.
Awesome.
So it's been an absolute pleasure to kind of give myself that access to things, if that makes sense.
I think that's just freedom. You know, Andrew and I have a regular saying. I don't know if we've mentioned it on the podcast before. If we have. But do you want to say it? Or do you want me to say it? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah. Why was that so hard to get out?
Because last time we said it, Andrew was like, perfection is the enemy of progress. And I said the opposite. Anyway, it doesn't. What did I say?
I can't remember.
It was like the opposite. So I was like, I'm going to get this wrong.
Yeah, perfection is not a helpful trait. I mean, it's not a real thing.
It's not a real thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
It's not a real thing.
No, it's just paralysis.
Because something can be right. Something can be right because it is what it's supposed to be. Like that's a thing.
Yes.
And that's a thing that you can work towards, is finding the thing that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But perfection,
I mean, we talked about this with Romy because we were talking about Steve Albini, and just saying like, are you familiar with Steve Albini?
Yeah.
So I recorded an album with him, and
amazing.
And he was like, don't worry about mistakes. He's like, just worry about the magic, and that was his whole philosophy. Was just like, you're trying to capture magic, which isn't about everything being perfect, and he's like, every record store has a $1 bin. And he's like, that's the bin where all the records that are perfect go. And so,
Yeah,
it's a really true
I'm
thing.
guilty of that too. I mean, I've agonized over making things sound pristine, and I am not interested in that as much anymore. And that's partially, I'm not to place blame. I am immensely grateful for my sort of partner in crime with everything I've ever recorded is Cassidy Turbin, my engineer, who has a pristine style of recording that is what, I have this sort of accidentally insanely hi-fi sound because of Cassidy and his craft. And he is a truly magnificent partner in all this, but I can get caught up in trying to make things perfect, which is not on him at all. I fall victim to the same thing for sure.
Yeah. I think you can just like become OCD about it, and you can produce it so much that there's actually just nothing good left in it. I've done that as
Me
well.
too. Yeah. For sure.
And sometimes you have to just do that really hard.
Yeah.
And then go, hey, this sucks.
Right.
I'm not ever going to do that again.
Yeah. But sometimes
You
I
can be
think
bombastic too.
What's that?
You can be bombastic too, and it's
But sometimes,
fun and...
I look back on things and I'm like, well, that's just where I was at the time.
Yeah.
And that's honest for how I was feeling. I was feeling like I needed to control and manage things, and that came through in the music.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, it's true.
It's always honest whether you want it to or not. Even if you're posturing, that's honest in some ways.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you have a nice, healthy, what's the right word? Self-relationship.
Doesn't always feel that way.
It's really nice. I'm just curious, if there's any consciousness to that, like lots of therapy or something like that.
Yeah, lots of therapy. I'm a sober person. I don't drink or use drugs anymore, and that has helped kind of clarify my life. And I've been, pursuing and thinking about music for my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and I have wonderful artists in my family who are, mentors to me, and so it's I don't know. It definitely doesn't. I don't always feel as grounded as I may sound. I certainly feel more like the crazy person I get to be on stage.
And we can have lots of parts and aspects. But even
Indeed.
like just how kind you are to the crazy person,
Yeah.
That's special. That's good.
Definitely learned. Definitely a learned thing.
Because I feel like I struggle. I'm like learning that too. And, lots of therapy.
Yeah. Therapy's great. I wish it were free for everyone.
I know. That would be a very bright future. I think we would have much better leaders all around.
It's like taking a class on yourself.
Yeah. And definitely like a class on how to talk to yourself as well.
Sure.
How to be with yourself. What we found is that everyone in the world of art, whether it's a filmmaker that we've spoken to, or a fashion designer, or a musician, a composer, people tend to fall into even if it's described in a different way, there are similar kind of underlying themes to what motivate people.
Yeah.
And
That makes sense.
Is there anything there that motivates you the most? Is like emotion, exploration, breaking rules? These are the things that it sort of
What motivates me the most? Is that the question?
Yeah. Like
the
feeling.
I don't know. I think motivation's a tricky thing to pin down because I think it's a Picasso quote that's inspiration comes, but it has to find you working.
That's so
That's
true.
nice.
And sometimes I feel like a deeply motivated person, and other times I can't get out of bed. So, and what motivates me to make things is I hear them. They oftentimes come here first, not as I'm working. That doesn't mean I get to skip the part where I get to skip the elbow grease, where I'm just, nothing's coming, and so I still sit down and chip away and try and find something. Doesn't mean I get to skip that just because things kind of arrive. And even when they do arrive, the piece from here to here is clogged with all sorts of junk. And so that process is always a challenge. But I think that, at the lowest points in my life, when all the other things that sometimes work as maybe something external to make me feel better, this is one of the most consistent tools that I have that make me feel connected, a part of use. I feel good about myself. It's a wholesome practice that when, all else fails, sometimes it takes all else failing for me to come back to this is the only thing that feels good. And it's really it's a tool that I use it is the motivate. It's not what motivates me to do it. It motivates me to do it, if that makes sense. Like it's the thing that gives me motivation, if that makes sense. So it's
it being music, it being the
feeling
higher force, the connection.
Yeah, feeling connected to the feeling of finishing something and having almost no memory of making it, or you cannot believe that you made it, or it's just, it shocks you in this way, and that is so rewarding for me, being surprised by what can come through if I'm available. I think that chasing that feeling is motivating, and it's just so exciting and rewarding when it happens and when it clicks and and it doesn't last. It's not something like you maintain the high off of, one that you did 10 years ago. It wears. And so it's always evolving. It's always you're always kind of trying to find that sweet spot in different places and from other angles. It's starting to sound sexual now, but it is kind of like a sexual relationship in some ways. I think that's my answer. I think it's kind of like a weird symbiotic thing.
Yeah. I love that. And, I think everyone, who sees an artist daydreaming or sees a person daydreaming, I feel like that's work too.
I agree with you.
Listening, you have to be quiet. You have to go for a walk.
I agree.
You have to have peace.
I agree.
You have to have that space.
There has to be a ton of time for space.
Yeah.
It's something I learned, something I've known for a long time, but only really recently learned, that if I spend a day truly doing nothing, I don't mean scrolling on my phone, but if I'm quiet, walking around, maybe picking up something to read, maybe listening to something, and thinking, present and active, and taking naps, that is can be a really rewarding creative thing, where next time I show up to at the piano, because I did all that other stuff, I'm so much more available.
I mean, I think that stuff is just like paramount to art of any kind.
We don't. It's not in our culture to laze around.
And likewise, it's not in our culture to always appreciate the arts. True. So, I think both could do with some evolution.
Yeah, I agree.
On that front. Thank you, industrial age. But hopefully we evolve out of that because AI makes us redundant.
That would be great.
Then only art's going to matter.
That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for
My
being
pleasure.
here today.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely chatting with both of you
Yeah, thanks so
and
much.
meeting both of you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah,
great,
really
great
lovely
talking
to
to
meet
you, and
Thanks.
meeting you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Storefront Church, Lukas Frank, composer, songwriter, amazing, incredible composer and performer, artist, musician. Check him out.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
We just want to thank our sponsors who support the Night Temple all across. We do live events as well as a podcast, and I just want to thank our sponsors, Joy Music House, Orchestral Tools, our
Vox Studios.
and Vox Studios, who we now have a partnership and a venue in Glendale Atwater.
Subscribe, give us 5 stars.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.